Okay, hi everybody. I'm Sharon Garewal, Senior Metadata Librarian at JSTOR. I'm co-presenting with Ron Snyder, the IPCA Lab's Director of Research and Development. This is our third year here at DHUG, my third year. The first year, we talked about building the JSTOR Thesaurus. Second year, I presented about maintenance and training the librarians in our team. And this year, I'm really excited to show some application of the thesaurus in our content. So a quick overview of what I'll be talking about, the Sustainability Collection, what's the definition of it, why we did it, and working with subject matter experts. And then I'll hand it over to Ron to show the results and a live demo. So a quick primer for people who aren't familiar with JSTOR. We're an online digital archive of journals and books. We were started in the mid-90s with journals. And we have just recently added books. We have over 3,200 journals going back to the first title on the run. So if you're familiar with journals and all of the children and stepchildren and foster children that can supply, some titles, just one title has maybe 6 different title changes. So quite impressive. And 30,000 books and over 9.3 million full-length articles. We're largely a humanities database. And the Sustainability Collection. So what is it? It is a new concept for us. The thesaurus team partnered with JSTOR Labs, which is what Ron works on. They're a neat team within Ithaca that they get to look at new concepts and opportunities for JSTOR and refine and validate them through research and experimentation. So this was one of the first ideas they had that they came to the thesaurus team with, to use the thesaurus as a part of the intelligence layer. So we were really excited as the thesaurus team to kind of show our work and see what the thesaurus could do. So this was the first project we worked on. The driver for the Sustainability Collection was that the labs team saw this as a huge emerging interdisciplinary area that they wanted to support for teaching needs and research. So the core topics are listed, such as cities and urbanization, economics, forestry, land use, and it's going to be composed of journals, books, and gray literature. And the thesaurus is part of the specialized functionality that's going to be incorporated, such as autocomplete, tagging articles with related terms and concepts. So we're pretty excited about this. So the first thing that I thought of when a labs team talked about the Sustainability Collection was, what is sustainability? What does that mean? I had no idea. I thought basically ecology, anything green, recycling. So I had to kind of do some research on what the definition was so we were all on the same page. And I got this great visual from the University of Michigan, the 3 spheres of sustainability and the interconnectedness of the different disciplines. And in research I found that the definitions were kind of across the board, but they all included 3 things. 1 was living within the limits of what the environment can provide. 2 was understanding the interconnections between the economy, society, and the environment. And lastly, the equal distribution of resources and opportunities within those. So moving into the thesaurus, just a quick overview. The JSTOR Thesaurus, we lovingly call it JTHES. It's pretty huge. It has over 57,000 terms and over 103,000 rules. Once again, it's largely driven by the humanities. We have 19 level top terms. And in the hierarchy, we also move down to almost 8 levels deep. So the challenge was, for our team, as the thesaurus team, was to assemble a list of key terms in sustainability, because these terms were going to be used to organize and tag the articles, the research articles in the Sustainability Collection. They'd also be used for autocomplete. And second is this was the first live prototype where the thesaurus was going to be implemented. So this was really the first project we worked on, and we weren't sure how to start, where to go with it. So it was a great lessons learned kind of project for all of us. And the terms, starting with that, I started with definition, what does this mean? And I pulled terms from the thesaurus, starting with the search function in Thesaurus Master. And I just went off a basic search. And I used a wildcard to truncate my search, recycle, environment, green. Those were the things I just came up with off the top of my head, and I came up with a list of about 1,200 terms, but they weren't as broadly focused in these other subject areas that I mostly got ecology, wildlife, things like that, botany. And so that wasn't enough. The next thing I did was I pulled branches from the thesaurus. I pulled entire branches with the export feature, and that gave me about 18,000 terms, which was huge, and a lot of terms that didn't necessarily relate to sustainability, but maybe one of the terms in their branch did. But what I was looking for in the terms was that they were always and unambiguously about sustainability. So is the term carbon always about sustainability in the definition we're using? No. Is green buildings always about sustainability? In the definition we are using, yes. So we used the large branch, 18,000, because it pulled from more branches in our tree, architecture, law, economics, than the smaller branch that I first pulled using the search function. So once we had a huge list, a definition, we went to Access Innovations and said, how do we get this done? How do we utilize our thesaurus so that we can use these terms and tag them? They gave us 3 really great options. And the first one was to create a new thesaurus for sustainability, a completely separate thesaurus than the JTHES. And the pro was that it was specific to this project, and we could work on it and make it exactly what we wanted to. The cons were that it was remembering to change things in 2 places, and the cost of associating it, cost of creating it and maintaining it. I think most of you are in a similar boat that I am in, whereas I'm the main person that works on this. I have 2 librarians back at JSTOR who work, when they can, about 10 hours a week, if they're not on another project. So having multiple thesauri for us is probably not the most efficient use of time. And I don't think I could remember to actually, change things in multiple places at this point. So, secondly, we could create a sustainability branch within the JTHES. So we could add another top-level term to the 19 we had, add a 20th top-level term called sustainability, and then we can just use broader terms to add all of the terms we want. If you're not familiar with broader terms, you can add, a term can live in multiple branches by using a broader term. So, for example, in our database, the sustainability design term lives in sustainability science, design engineering, and sustainability engineering. So, with that top-level term and all its children, it's living in 3 different places. So it becomes redundant and a bit cluttered. So with the lowest level, the 1,200 terms I pulled, we have 1 branch, and those 1,200 terms would at least live in 1 other place. So it's just multiplying an already huge thesaurus for us, so we decided not to go with that approach. The last approach was to create a facet tag with the term sustainability. The pros is that it creates a list in the faceted view in Thesaurus Master, and it's really easy to maintain. It's an editable field, but the cons are that it doesn't show a hierarchy, so it's just a flat list. And you can't have multiple facets. You can't have the same term, like sustainable design. You can't have it in sustainability and in another project called design concepts, say. So that wasn't a problem for us since this was the first project we were working on. So for time, cost, and efficiency, we went with the faceted view. The facet tab appears in the Thesaurus master screen. You can add it in the admin module, just like you would add any other little tab at the bottom of the term record. Scope notes, history, definition, this is just added at the bottom. Click on it, type in the term sustainability, and that term is tagged as sustainability, and you can come up with a full view, which I'll show. So once we figured out our approach, we went into really the full-on research of examining other glossaries and seeing what's out there, looking at the terms we already had, looking at the existing branches I pulled, cleaning them up, adding new terms, adding new branches, constructing new rules and tweaking old rules, and then testing the content. So we added a bunch of new branches, such as developmental studies, environmental studies. We found that you could add anything plus studies, and it was an emerging discipline. So a lot of studies were added that we didn't have before, which is exciting. And new rules, truncated, build, ecology, urbanize, sustainable, soils became huge rules. So we were very excited to see the character limit of 100,000 in the rule builder for that purpose. So those were some huge end products for the thesaurus. Once everything was cleaned up and ready for view, we started talking about looking at subject matter experts. The labs team approached faculty members in 10 different disciplines and asked them to go over a subset of these terms, of the 18,000 terms. We just put them in buckets of disciplines for them, and we ended up with 6 total SMEs to work on that in architecture, engineering, biological and environmental science, agriculture and urban studies, economics, and law and policy. So a nice swath covering a lot of disciplines of SMEs. So once the SME was secured, there was an introductory phone call, and they talked about Bob and Gabe here at Access Innovations. They're my adopted team, whether they like it or not, and they conducted these SME interviews, and they talked about basic taxonomic practices, which was really needed because these are people that aren't used to taxonomies and aren't used to looking at hierarchies and lists of terms. And then a brief review of what we were trying to do and what we needed from them. And then they were sent a flat list and that looks like this, and asked to review it. So if you can see it, the spreadsheet is really pretty basic. They were just given a term in alphabetical order, and we asked, is this correctly included in the facet? Yes or no? If they said yes, great. If they said no, we pulled it out of the facet. Is it phrased well? Are there synonyms that you can add to it, acronyms, inverted phrasings? Are there other suggestions? Do you have any notes about this? At the bottom of the spreadsheet, we also asked for other suggestions on different concepts. So some SMEs gave us really great feedback that was very rich and informative. Other SMEs didn't give a lot of feedback at all. Some of the lessons we learned from this, and I have to give full credit to my thesaurus team, Emily and Allison and John and Bob and Gabe, because at this point I was on maternity leave, so they did all of the heavy lifting here. So when I say we, I collectively mean we, but not me really. They did all of the spreadsheet and incorporation, which was a lot. Even though it was only 6 spreadsheets, there was a lot of color coding going on because we found that some of the SMEs would put maybe it's a good concept, sometimes. So possibly drop down boxes where they can only say yes or no would be a lesson learned. Showing them a hierarchy where their discipline was involved would have been more helpful for them to have more context. Also, to collate the feedback first would have been more efficient in some cases because some of the suggestions were multiplied. They had the same suggestions, and to look at it more than one time was tough, cost time. Another suggestion was to have another tab for the suggestions. So some small lessons learned on just doing the spreadsheet, but I think they were valuable in the end. So since this project was very quick, it happened in May, and then it ended in about, came back in like August, September, and in that small window of time, over 385 terms were added, about 1,200 rules were added and 400 tweaked, and at the end, between 1,200 and 18,000, 1,500 terms were tagged as being in the facet. So this is the facet view. It's not glamorous, but it's what it is, and it's the flat list of all of the terms within the facet. And here's the button at the bottom of the screen in the facet. It's a little plus sign. You just type in sustainability, and so it's an easily editable field. If you want to delete it, it's easy to delete or add. From that, I'm going to turn it over to Ron for the more glamorous section of this, where you'll actually see the results live in progress.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure how glamorous this is, but this is sort of where the rubber meets the road in some respects. We'll talk about some of of that work, and then also some work that was done in parallel that was somewhat separate, that only recently have started to converge in interesting ways that is still a work in progress, and presumably we'll come back next year and be able to update on progress. But yeah, as Sharon described, JSTOR is interested in exposing a new multidisciplinary collection around sustainability concepts that will include both content that's already in the JSTOR corpus, but also will bring in additional journals, grade literature, and other types of content. And the first step in this process was to identify the subset of the current corpus that was related to sustainability. And we had a couple of fits and starts with that at the start of the project, in probably the first or second quarter of last year. What I'm going to describe is a dual track process that we use up until just recently, and then there's some really interesting things going on right now that is kind of bringing these together into a hybrid approach. And Bob may remember some of the discussions we had early on about my hope that we could come up with a hybrid approach that involved both the use of the thesaurus and the rules that identify the terms from our content, and also approach with which I had a lot of familiarity and a lot of success with, and that is topic modeling. We've used topic modeling on other projects before, and in the type of content that JSTOR has, it's been quite effective in allowing us to do some classifying and clustering of content. And because the work on the thesaurus was still in the early stages of identifying those sustainability terms, as Sharon mentioned early on, now there were, 18,000 or something, terms. And if you looked at the 9 million odd articles that we have, roughly 70% of those had at least one of those terms in their set of identified terms. So to say that 70% of our content was related to sustainability, well, maybe at some level it was, but not in the way that we wanted. We wanted something a little more focused, and so at that point things were still a little bit too coarse for us to use for our intended purpose, which was to come up with a really tight subset of our corpus that could be used for this new collection. So what we did in the early stages was use topic modeling, and in particular we used the LDA approach that we've used quite a bit in the past. And we ran a topic model, unsupervised topic model on the corpus, and out of that emerged 100 still fairly coarse topics. And what we did at that point is we had some in-house subject matter experts, if you want to call them that. I was included, so that's why I put quotes around subject matter expert. But anyway, there were enough of us that had different views on this, and I think that the aggregate results were still pretty useful. And we went through those 100 topics and characterized each one as either being high, low, medium, or not applicable for sustainability. So we assigned a weight to each topic and then aggregated all those into a sustainability score for each topic, and then ran a topic model on the corpus to assign a score to each article, and then establish a threshold, and the top end were kind of allocated to this collection. So that was sort of living in a parallel universe to the work being done in the thesaurus and on the semantic index. We used the terms that were pulled out of the semantic index for display, and they could be used for filtering, they could be used in search and discovery activities, but they weren't at that point used in the identification of this corpus subset. Now, more recently, we've been able to take those, I think, as I recall, there are right around 1,500 and some odd terms that have now been tagged in the thesaurus facet as being sustainability related in some fashion based on the work of these SMEs that Sharon talked about. And so just recently, it's actually been within the last couple weeks, I've been able to create a correlation between the topics from the LDA topic model and the sustainability terms, and recompute sustainability scores for all 9.5 million articles, and kind of recompute or regenerate this sustainability corpus. And actually, in some initial work that has been done in validating that, it looks much better. I won't say much better. It looks better than what we did before. I think that the combination of these two approaches is starting to kind of fulfill the promise that I hope that it would, that this would be a very complementary sort of approach that would allow us to combine, the rules-based approach and more the statistics and kind of more co-occurrence approach that is part of the topic modeling concept. So as I say, this is a work in progress, but so far so good. I'm pretty happy with the results up to this point. So this is what I just described here. So there was a bit of a manual activity initially to characterize each of these topics from the topic modeling approach. Required human intervention. This next generation that uses the terms in the sustainability facet and the thesaurus allows for an automated approach and also allows us to generate finer grained topic models. So the next generation of this approach uses 1,000 topics in the topic model. The 1,500 and some odd terms in the thesaurus does some computation to generate a score, and then we're able to assign a weight to each article in our sustainability collection. We've also employed some fairly standard TF-IDF kinds of weighting to further take the semantic terms that were identified and assign a relative weight to each term based on the importance of that term to that document and the frequency in which that term applies in the corpus overall. So just because something occurs 5 times in an article doesn't necessarily mean it's more important than something that only occurred 3 times. So you got to take into account the larger population. So we have applied some TF-IDF measures to the individual terms. And then that TF-IDF weight is used in a couple of different ways. One is to order the terms that are presented in the interface when we show them in a document, and also to apply to searching. So when a term is used for a search, not only is that term used as a filter, but it's also used as a boost factor in the search algorithm. So the terms that more strongly are associated with a particular document, those documents are weighted more highly in the search results. So here's where I'm going to try to jump off to a little bit of a hybrid, live demo and chart deal. So we'll see how this goes. We're having some problems earlier with our internet connection. So this is our sustainability portal, and all of these things I'm going to show in this demo are live and available to anybody. I mean, so it doesn't require JSTOR participation or any kind of special access. It's all freely available. Now, to view content, as you click through a search result to an article, if the article is open access, then you can see it. If it's a subscription-based article, then you'll have to authenticate, and if you're a JSTOR participant, then you can get it. Otherwise you can't. Or so we use them for autocomplete. That's the first place in which we try this. So I'll use climate change, and this will only show terms which have been included in this subset that we have, the sustainability subset. And in the interface we have, it's a fairly straightforward, faceted navigation interface. This particular facet includes, we call them keywords, but they're thesaurus terms. They're the index terms from the thesaurus. Users didn't quite, the use of terms like thesaurus and semantic index didn't resonate very well, so we use something a little more generic, but these are the thesaurus terms. The search results include the top terms that were the thesaurus terms that were identified. And this is where that both filtering and weighting applies. So if I select, in this case, tropical regions, that term is applied to the search. And in the background, you can't see it in the interface, but in the background, it's applying that as a filter, so only those articles with that term appear. And the weight for that term has a pretty heavy influence on the overall relevancy weighting of the search results. The primary factors being the term that was selected and the date of publication. The more recent content is more highly weighted than other content. So so far so good on this. I think that the results are reasonable. Actually, in most cases, quite good. I think the hybrid approach with the semantic index and sustainability terms, combined with the LDA topic modeling, are really proven to be very complementary techniques. A lot of it occurs under the covers. The user doesn't understand or need to see what's underpinning all of this, but it has provided us a pretty rich set of tools to use for this corpus identification. Something else that has been sort of a side effect of this, not really a side effect. So with topic modeling, one of the inherent problems with topic modeling is that although you can identify, it will identify topics that if you look at those, you can kind of, as a human, you can assess what that grouping indicates or represents, and it's fairly straightforward, I guess, in some respects. But there are not effective techniques for auto-labeling your topics. That usually requires human intervention. So I've been experimenting with the use of the semantic facet or the sustainability facet in the thesaurus as a way to infer a label for topics based on the strength of association of that topic with thesaurus terms, and looking at clustering of terms at different levels, and then try to take a label from that. Again, that's a work in progress, but I'm pretty hopeful that that will result in something that we can use. I'm doing my time here. Okay. So a couple of other things I wanted to demo real quick. So not only are we using thesaurus and semantic index for our sustainability collection, there are at least 3 other projects that we're using this at different levels with. In some respects, this has become a kind of part of our secret sauce in a lot of our labs projects. This classroom reading out real quickly. Go through these again. These are all publicly available, so if you're interested in knowing more about it, the URLs are on the charts and in the PDF in the packet. And I'm happy to talk about any of these at any length if somebody wants to know more about what's happening under the covers.
So you're using the same techniques to do these other areas, like classroom readings here?
No, not exactly. So classroom readings...
Repeat the question, sorry.
So the question was, to paraphrase, I think to what extent are we using those techniques in these other projects? We're not using the topic modeling and classification for classroom readings. For this, we actually did some usage data analysis. We looked at all of the usage data, and we looked for usage patterns that suggested that certain articles are being used in classroom environments. So as you look at usage patterns, typically over academic terms, you'll see some articles are used, 3 or 4 times a day, maybe none one day, next day maybe 5 or 6, but it has a fairly regular pattern. And all of a sudden it'll spike up. So over a period of 2 weeks, a article will be used dozens of times at a single institution, which strongly suggests that some professor has included that in their course syllabus as part of their assignment or reading assignment. So we've identified those articles that exhibit that pattern. So we identified roughly 10,000 articles that strongly show that usage pattern. So that's part of our classroom readings. So the idea here is that we will provide tools for teachers and professors to generate classroom materials so they can go to the site. And so I'll show you real quick here. So the idea is that if you're a teacher and you're teaching political science and you're interested in putting together reading materials for, and these are just sort of initial identification of some topic areas, that this list can be expanded and actually it is being as we talk here. So if you're teaching, let's see, the Vietnam War, this identifies, I don't know, a couple dozen articles that have been taught previously that are associated with that topic. And so again, these are the terms from the thesaurus here to help characterize the article. In some cases, or in this case, we do have abstracts available for the articles, but there are many articles for which we don't. Here's one here. This article does not have an abstract, and these terms are really about the only way that you can provide a bird's eye view of what that article is about. It's not the be-all, end-all, but it gives you something to work with. So we're using it there. We're also using it in the case where a user or an instructor wants to generate a list. So this word cloud here are the terms, and if you're interested in poetry, you can identify articles that are associated with poetry that have been previously used for classroom instruction. And we also do some work, some text analysis to identify reading level and length of article, because that's also important for an instructor. I mean, they want to find kind of a sweet spot in terms of article length, and they're also looking at, if this is a high school teacher, they're looking at something that's more approachable, so look for reading levels that are at a lower level. So these can be filtered with this kind of a widget here. So that's our classroom readings. This has received quite a bit of attention and traction. So I think this is a project. So Labs is our charter is to kind of explore ideas, work with some users initially to kind of validate and refine the idea, put it into some sort of a prototype state, and then see what happens. And if it gets some traction, then this will be turned into a real product on our main site and such. And I think this is one that will likely take that next step, and it's getting a lot of attention. Another one, this is more of an internal tool. So as Sharon mentioned, we have 57,000 terms in our thesaurus. It's I don't know how that relates to other thesauri. I mean, that's big, small, whatever. It seems big to me. And so the question often becomes from more of the non-technical users. What is this thing, and what does it represent, and such? And furthermore, we're interested in knowing how JSTOR content maps to individual branches or terms in the thesaurus. So this tool here, which is based on the D3 visualization package. So this sort of marries three things: the visualization tool, the thesaurus, and the indexing. So for each individual term, we can identify, I don't know if you can see that in the back, but this identifies not only the number of descendant terms in the thesaurus hierarchy that are under this particular term, but also the number of documents in the JSTOR corpus that have been indexed with that term. So it starts to give you a way to easily kind of see the forest for the trees kind of thing here. And you can drill down in this, and you can show in more than one level of the hierarchy for our sustainability facet. We can also limit what's shown, or not limit, but we can identify those terms that are, it's kind of hard to see here, but those terms that are associated with our sustainability facet are colored green, so those nodes have a green color. If they have a child that is part of that facet, I don't see any that have. So these that have the light green are not tagged as a sustainability term explicitly, but somewhere in their, in one of the descendants in their hierarchy do. In this case, these are terms that are identified. And the relative size of the node shows the relative number of documents in the corpus that have been tagged with that term. So this provides kind of a nice way to start to visualize how all this fits together. Right now this is only for internal use, but this may, in fact, some of this may find its way into a navigation or discovery component on one of our user-facing tools. The other one I want to show real quick, I know we're running out of time here, but this is actually perhaps my favorite one. This is a mobile app, so even though this looks kind of wacky in the big presentation, if you kind of squeeze this down, this is what it looks like on a phone. And again, this is something you can go to on your mobile device. So this is a kind of a proof of concept app, and the idea is that a user could use their phone to take a picture of arbitrary text. So it could be a page in a journal article. It could be anything that you'd want to take a picture of. We do the OCRing on the image. We use both the Maestro back end to identify the semantic terms from that text. We do topic modeling on it. We take the combination of the topic model, results in the semantic terms, and then we have a recommendation engine that understands that and can find the most relevant articles for those topics and terms. So I have an article here that I pulled up earlier. So here's an article. I forget the magazine that I pulled this out of, but the article was about IT and sustainability, and a couple of other themes were kind of embedded in this first page of text. So the idea is that you're using your phone. So on a real phone, of course, you'd be snapping a picture. Here I'm using kind of a simulated version. So I'll go to that same image that I showed you. Select that. And then it does the OCRing, so it converts the image to text, which takes a few seconds. And then it does the semantic term extraction and topic modeling to find the most relevant topics, and then does the recommendation. So in this case, it found these concepts in that page of text. And then shows a list of JSTOR articles that are thought to be most similar to that topic area. It's kind of a fun tool. I mean, the results. I mean, it's like the old adage, garbage in, garbage out. If you take a photograph, and if you've got a fairly low resolution camera, or if you get bad lighting, or you have out of focus, or if the text you're taking a picture of is not very dense with interesting terms, the results are a little bit spotty. But in some cases, or in many cases, you get pretty good results back if you start with a good image. Whether this goes anywhere or not, I don't know. I think it's kind of a fun tool. I had a lot of fun working on it.
If anyone wants to play with it as a break, you can.
Yeah, I encourage you to try it out. Tell me what you think. Then the last 30 seconds here. This is sort of a these are the ones I just talked about, and a shameless plug for two other labs projects that are not thesaurus related or semantic index related, but I think they're pretty cool anyway. This Understanding Shakespeare, and this other one, which is a reflowing of image-based content. So as you probably could imagine, in the JSTOR corpus, well over 95% of our content is digitized print, so they're page scans, and they're not very friendly for mobile devices. And this is probably hard to see here, but this is what a typical page might look like for an article. Hard to read on a mobile device. We're looking at a tool that allows us to identify the particular article or piece of the article in the page, and then kind of reflow it to make it more mobile friendly. And that's sort of an ongoing project. But I think that's kind of a neat one. And then this last one, this Understanding Shakespeare. If there's anybody in the audience that is interested in Shakespeare, you might get a kick out of this. Oops, lost my page. So this, we have 12 plays now in this tool. Go to the text of the play here on the left-hand side. You can scroll down, and for each line in the play, we can identify. We have a number here that indicates the number of JSTOR articles that are associated or that reference that line in the play. And if you click through to it, you'll get a list of search results that show the articles, and you can get kind of a preview, to see how that particular line is referenced. And if you're interested in knowing more about it, you can click through to the actual article. And Shakespeare scholars have found this to be quite a nice asset to have. So. All right, that's it. I apologize for running over.